Hello, everyone. Thank you for being patient as we get ready to start. And just a quick note, so this presentation will be recorded so that we can post it on the new admit website along with the slide presentation. So no need to take vigorous notes, but you can if you'd like. And just introduce myself. My name is Blaine Jones. I'm the admissions director. You probably all should know who I am and probably getting sick of my emails and notifications. But yeah, welcome. And this is the diversity information session. So this is an opportunity to get to know some of our key stakeholders and key members of our community who are part of our student leadership. And we'll be in representation and speaking on behalf of many of the affinity groups and TLC and what have you. And so I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. Chancellor, who you met in our first presentation, is going to be taking the lead. And Chancellor, I pass the mic over to you. I'll be in the background just answering or like in the chat. So if you have any questions and whatnot, go ahead and just drop them in the chat, but there will be an opportunity at the end to ask questions.
All right, thank you so much, Blaine. I have a presentation prepared for you all, and I do have members of our affinity groups here, so they'll be here to answer your questions and share a little bit more about their groups, so that way you can get a sense of what J-School student life is like and some of the diversity that's here too. So starting with our panel, I am actually going to go around and have you all introduce yourselves too before I share this real quick too. So first I have Sasha Hupka, who's from our Women in Media group. If you want to say hi.
Thanks, Chance. Hi, guys. My name is Sasha. I am a first-year graduate student here at the J School, and I'm here representing Women in Media today. And we will talk a little bit more about what Women in Media is later. But essentially, we are an affinity group for everybody who identifies as a woman or who identifies as gender nonconforming at the J School.
Next, Ari. I see Ari on my screen.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ari. I'm a first-year graduate student at the journalism school, kind of sandwiched in between the narrative and multimedia tracks, but primarily doing investigative and data reporting. Yeah, I'm here representing EJA, which is not really an affinity group, Entrepreneurial Journalism Association, but I'll tell you more about that a little bit later.
And then Dallin, who's on my screen.
Hey y'all, my name is Dallin Mello and I'm a first year doing short form video here at the J School. And I am representing the NLGJA, or the Association of LGBTQ Journalists. I'm happy to connect and share what I know about the organization and the work we're doing.
Thank you. And Brian.
Hey everyone, I'm Brian Wynn. I'm a first year multimedia student here at the J School. I've been a local board member with AAJA for the San Francisco region, and I've also done some work with the national group with their student workshop Voices. So happy to talk about that and about resources and what we've been doing at the school.
All right, then Yuri.
Hi, I'm Yuri. I'm second year, almost graduating, reporter on the multimedia track. I'm doing investigative, but also data. And yeah, I'm the chair of NAHJ. So happy to answer questions. Also, my connection is a bit unstable, sorry. So I'll have like the video up, but I'm here and happy to answer anything.
That works. All right. And lastly, we have Sabrina.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sabrina. I'm the chair of JAMINA, which is the Journalists Association for Middle East and North Africa. It's a really new organization, so we'd love, like, you know, anyone's interest is welcome, basically. And I'm happy to talk more about it with anyone who would like to.
All right, thank you all. All right. Oh, and lastly, again, I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning, but my name is Chancellor. I'm a second year doc student, and I'm also the co-chair of our NABJ student chapter too, so I'll be sharing more about that. And then at any point during the discussion, feel free to drop your questions or comments in the chat, and then we'll be sure to get to that towards the end. All right, so let me share my screen. Oops, sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna have to lower you. All right, so once again, here are all our panelists today. Thank you so much, you all. Let me go to our next. Always gets me. Okay, just a brief overview. Here are overall demographics at the J School based on the numbers that I've been given. So 44% male, 55% female too, and not including those who may identify as non-binary. Also we do have a 15% of our students are international, and then also, oh no, not 15%, more than, and then 65% identify as, the numbers should totally be switched for that. I got the numbers wrong for this one, but more do identify as BIPOC as well. For class of 2022, we have 54 students. 9 of them are international students. They're coming from various countries too. 29 of them are from the state of California. We do have a few that are coming from out of state as well, including our 37% are first generation. Most of them do, or at least half of them do receive some sort of financial aid. And then 77% of people identify as BIPOC in a sense. And then overall of the people that have submitted their information, 65% identify as female and 33% identify as male. So that's just a brief overview of class of 2022. Okay, and affinity groups. So far we have about 7 affinity groups on our campus. I know some of them are not necessarily like as far as like diversity wise affinity groups in terms of EJA, but we do have a variety of organizations that you can join to, mainly each one if they identify with your ethnic or gender background too, if you want to know more about that as well. All right, I'm going to start first with NABJ. So again, I'm the co-chair of our National Association of Black Journalists UC Berkeley chapter. And mainly what we do, we are the student chapter, but it's part of a larger organization. So we do have like local networking events, there's scholarship opportunities, and we also host annual career fairs for journalism students. We're actually having one this weekend for our students too. So that gives you an opportunity to network. Usually those are open to all students as well. And it's also just a safe space for students of color to like share about issues they may be having, or if they want to like network with other people within the university. And we're also actively involved in our equity and inclusion efforts too, just to make sure we're keeping it a safe and equitable space for everyone at the school. All right, next is our Asian American Journalists Association. I'm going to let Brian take over for this.
Yeah,
explain
sure.
a bit more. Thanks.
So the Asian American Journalists Association is similar to a lot of the other affinity groups. You know, we're a group of predominantly Asian American journalists, but you don't have to be Asian to join. And you know, Asians are a very wide label, so we're a very inclusive group. But you know, we're here to kind of advocate for our community and kind of just work to get the newsroom or the newsrooms to be more diverse, right? So the local and national level has a lot of resources like scholarships, workshops, and mentorship programs to connect you all with working journalists. And here at the school, we've done events in the past when there was a pandemic, things like bringing in journalists to have off the record conversations about what it's like to work in newsrooms as a minority, or bringing in people to do portfolio reviews and kind of, you know, assessing what is what we need as students, and kind of, you know, using our resources and networks within the larger Asian American Journalists Association network to bring folks into the school and, you know, enhance our education. So hopefully we'll be in person next year. We will be in person next year, so we'll have more events and we'll be able to do some more programming. So I'm very excited for you all to be here, and yeah, more soon.
Thank you so much. All right. Next is NLGJA.
Yeah, y'all. It's definitely been a slower year for NLGJA, but we're an organization that looks to represent anybody who identifies within the LGBTQ spectrum. So that's also a really broad spectrum of identity. And from what I've experienced with NLGJA is a space to build community and a sense of belonging at the J School. I know for myself personally, a lot of my work focuses on LGBTQ communities. It's been really nice making connections in this group to turn to people about our reporting and just to kind of check in on things. But like I said, it has been a slow year. I think being virtual has been a bit difficult, but next year we're really hoping to do some like film screenings and have some speakers come in, have some more events and gatherings for community building. And the NLGJA in general, in like the broader sense, has a lot of really great resources. And once you become a member, you can go to the student conventions. I know there's one June 25th and 26th. And also a series of scholarships that can help with the expenses of the J school, that are always really great to have. And then I think one thing I really loved about the NLGJA is that there's a big sense of mentorship. If you find other folks who identify within are a member of NLGJA, you can reach out to them and they're usually really happy to help in your career as you're kind of blossoming at the J school. I know I had some help looking for internships this year by reaching out to some people in the NLGJA. So yeah, it's a great organization, and I'm really excited for next year to have it built up a bit more. And if any of y'all are interested, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Dallin. All right, next we have Women in Media.
Hey guys, so as I was mentioning, I think before, Women in Media is an organization here on the J Schools campus that really tries to serve as a space for women and people who identify as women, and also gender nonconforming folks. Essentially, you know, like what Dallin and Brian were saying, the idea of women is a very broad label. That's a label that crosses a lot of different potential gender identities and also a lot of, you know, different ethnicities. And so we try to aim to be a space for everybody to kind of come together and speak about issues pertaining specifically to women on the campus. That includes like off the record meetings where we talk about problems that might be coming up. That also includes networking events and trying to really build professional connections and professional pipelines. And talking about kind of the culture of newsroom diversity and newsroom gender equity as a whole. And so that's kind of what we do. This has also been a slow year for us as well, because with things being virtual, it's just been very difficult. But at the same time, it's also presented a lot of opportunities that in the past, maybe we would have been more hesitant to take. So for instance, recently we did a talk in honor of Women's History Month, where we had a bunch of different women Zoom in from several different places. A few of our panelists were out on the East Coast in DC and New York. And those are people who, you know, previously, if we had wanted to do a talk with them, we likely would have had to foot the cost of flying them in. But because we were able to do things over Zoom, we were just able to do stuff in a virtual format and really create a space where it was conversational, where people it didn't just feel like a panel. So that's kind of what we do, and we're hoping to, when stuff returns to in person, have kind of a mix of the old and the new together.
So sorry about that. I was like,
was that my cue to shut up?
no, it wasn't. I hit the wrong slide. I was like, I don't know why it's not, my clicker isn't letting me go. Oh, why is it doing this? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, but thank you so much. Now I can go to the next one. All right, and next is John Mena.
Hi, yes, so we just started our John Mena organization 1 year ago. So prior to this school year, it never had much in-person time, and also there's not a big, a strong like national affinity group that we're associated with, but we do work with the Center for Middle East Studies on campus. And we do things like bring speakers who have worked on issues relevant to the Middle East or Middle Eastern journalists to the school to have talks or networking events. We also try to have like some cultural events and just kind of create a community. The Middle Eastern and North African community is pretty limited. There are only 54 of us total, I guess. So yeah, I am technically, I was told I'm the only Middle Eastern identifying person in my year. So I would love to recruit some people to be in it for next year. And like I mentioned earlier, it's really new. So it's really up to our interpretation and our discretion how our incoming class as well as our current year want to move forward with it. So that's kind of exciting about it. And also just like hopefully a space for any incoming students that identify with these communities to feel kind of, to help, acclimate them to the J School. So.
Thank you. All right, next is NAHJ. With Yuri.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was mute. Yeah, so we are a group of Hispanic identifying journalists, but also we invite like everyone to join, like everyone who is interested in covering Hispanic communities, or like we are very open. We don't only have Hispanic identifying members. We also have been like slow this year, mainly because last year, the main thing about NAHA was like building a community. So we will do like a lot of like small gatherings, which really help at least me as a first year and incoming student, like get to know other people. And we would just like, hang out at the courtyard and get like some Mexican food or pupusas or whatever. And it was fun and it was great to know other students and build community. And now we cannot do it also because people, I feel like, are also very like zoomed out and are not like very interested in like, joining, and it's understandable. Also being part of NAHJ is great to be part of like the national group, which is very big, and it's like a great source of opportunities for internships, for scholarships. There is also a year event, which is in June. Last year was virtual. This year, I think it's gonna be virtual too. But the whole NAHJ community is great also for networking. They're like very supporting, and there's like a Bay Area chapter, and we also have like some money to sponsor memberships for the national group.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I believe it's our last one, entrepreneurial association with Ari.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, the Entrepreneurial Journalists Association is not an affinity group in the traditional sense, but we are a new organization based in the J School. And basically we're dedicated, as the slide says, to bringing innovation into journalism and particularly to our Berkeley journalism community. So that means a lot of things. Maybe you have an idea for a startup or an app or a new reporting technique that you want to bring to the J School, and we are super welcoming of that. For example, I'm really interested in applications of machine learning to journalism. So I've been taking classes in the School of Information to learn more about that. That's another thing we're really big on, is collaboration with the other departments. I think in the past, the journalism school has felt sort of like its own little silo. And so we're trying to build those partnerships across campus and really encourage students to branch out and take advantage of the full UC Berkeley community. And then just in general, we're also interested in, kind of the mixing of technology and journalism, and then the way those two play together. So I'm one of the co-chairs, and the other three co-chairs and I are planning some events for next year. Like the others have said, it's been very difficult in the virtual format to do stuff this year, but we have some plans for group projects, maybe a hackathon, like a journalism hackathon, pitch presentation, and then guest speakers in and outside of journalism. So maybe people who are in the tech field. I was just speaking with a VP for machine learning for a tech company, and he said he would be interested in maybe coming and speaking. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I would encourage you to join us next year when we're all in person. Another plug for EJA is that we're a registered student organization, so we actually have access to funding, which is really big. So yeah, come join us next year.
Okay, thank you so much. And overall for you all, I'm here, like we basically provided a list of resources that support graduate student diversity. And of course, this slide will be available after the presentation too. But basically for those who are in need of financial aid, there's some available for international students, current students, students from out of state. There's a list of health and wellness resources too. Also for our LGBTQ community, there's some as well, students who are parents. I feel like sometimes that can also be overlooked, but there are resources for you. And then of course we have the Office for Equity and Inclusion. So feel free to come to them with any of your concerns or issues. We also have a board at the J School too, who also deals with that in terms of our steering committee as well. And then also for our undocumented students as well, if there are any questions that you have related to that, there are resources available for you. All right, and that wraps up our presentation overall. So now we want to just leave it open. Oops, let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, I'm stop sharing. All right, I'm going to leave it open for questions in case anyone has any. Yes, Corey.
Hey,
Hi.
so my question is, I guess, something that everyone can answer. Basically, how do the different affinity groups work together to coalition and community build between each other to make the experience better for like students who are like, I guess, existing at the intersection of two different affinity groups, or maybe already members of the sorry, maybe members of the national group of like two different orgs.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I believe this year, because things have been virtual, I mean, we've been trying to like connect as much as we can through a virtual space. But I do know that in previous years, there have been like mixers between, for example, like NABJ and NAHJ have come together to try to have like their own separate mixers. There have been like, I think, attempts to have like large conferences between a mix of the affinity groups, but in recent years, like depending on like the number of students and members, that's just going to depend on the interest too, but those are available as well if you or if students like want to kind of like join or like extend a hand and say, hey, do you want to have like a meeting together? So yeah, so it is possible to, and there have been some done in the past. I would just say for like this year, not as much, mainly because mostly either membership wise or because of like, you know, people remain virtual or remote where they are. It hasn't been as present this year, but yes.
The other thing is each affinity group or organization elects co-chairs. So for EJA, we actually have 4 co-chairs. We've agreed to, we have to have 2 technically on paper, but we have 4. And all of those are representatives of the leadership committee. So we meet, you know, once every 2 or 3 weeks. And we all get together and we kind of bring forward the concerns of our affinity group to the larger Berkeley community and to each other.
I would just add one final note on that to say that, you know, I know one of the things that I'm really looking forward to doing next year is to trying to do more events once we're back in person, kind of in combination with other affinity groups. I'm really excited about that. And even virtually, like, I mean, I'm thinking, for instance, with like that panel that we recently, for women in media that we recently organized, like I know Chancellor like reached out to me and Brett, who's the current co-chair of Women in Media, and she you know, suggested someone who was phenomenal and a great fit in our panel. And so, you know, we were like, thank you. Yes, 100%. We would love to have this person on our panel. And so I think we all kind of talk, even if we're not doing events formally, because there's just so much overlap between the different affinity groups, especially for a group like Women in Media, where, you know, you might have somebody who's a member of Women in Media and also a member of NABJ or also a member of the EJA, or who, you know, is somebody who's a member of some other affinity group. And so it's kind of important to like have those communications, and they do exist.
And lastly, just to put it out there, for the most part, most of, if not all of the affinity groups are typically like open to everyone if like you have a strong interest in joining those. So, I mean, it doesn't always have to identify with like your particular background. as well. It's just like if you have something or an interest that aligns with the group, like you're definitely free to join as well. None of them seem to be, at least to my knowledge, are just like exclusive, like to few people only. So yeah.
My understanding of it always has been, if you believe in the mission of, increasing diversity in our newsrooms and making it reflect, our communities, then you're always welcome, whether it's AAJ, NAHJ, NABJ. It's in the past, there's been the Unity Conference, which is where all three organizations have done like a single conference, like a mega conference. We haven't done that recently, but that might be a fun thing to start at like a more grassroots level, or maybe just at the school.
All right. Are there any other questions people may have about Student Life? Pablo is asked, is there an application process to join these groups? If not, what does joining look like? Personally, for NABJ, there is no application process, at least for our student chapter. For the larger organization, it is encouraged that you do have like a membership to be part of NABJ. And so this is so you can have access to like, their scholarships or internship opportunities too. But for our student chapter, it's typically like open to whoever wants to join. For other affinity groups, you're free to speak on that if you have a formal process, or if not, what it's like.
Not for us. Just show up.
And in terms of membership costs, I believe that the school will pay sometimes. So I think it's one of those things you ask or they offered sometimes, but there's money to cover memberships.
Yeah, same for Women in Media. We don't like just come to the meeting. If you want to join the national org, you can, I believe, do that. I'm actually not a member of the national org, secret, but not because I don't want to be for any specific reason, just because I don't know, I looked at joining and I didn't have the money at the time. And so I was like, I'll just do this in a few months, and I totally forgot. So should get on that.
That's true. Yes.
I was just gonna ask, how soon can like new admits get involved in the different affinity groups? Is it like wait till you get to campus, wait till July when the new like school year starts, or is it? No.
Yeah, usually that's something that you can do if you once you get to campus though. But if you are aware of like people who are in a group that you want to like join, like just to feel free to reach out, say that, hey, like you're interested. So that way, like by the time you get there, you'll already kind of like slowly transition in. Or if you're not sure yet what group that you want to like be part of or join, definitely like kind of we do have like this, I believe it's during Tracy, isn't it during like orientation, like where everyone is able to like discuss. It's like a large info session where you get to learn about like all the groups too. And then by that time, and then this isn't just for the affinity groups, is if you want to join the investigative reporting program or other groups within the J School as well too. So that's just something, if you're interested in like from the moment on, definitely vocalize that. If it's maybe like later on in your J School career, like second year, you're like, no, you know what, I do want to join NABJ now, like, it's the door's open every time.
Yes, what Chancellor said, there's usually information tables that are in the courtyard. Our first years, we didn't have that this year, but we're going to have it this coming fall. So,
Tracy, maybe you can answer this one, or I believe you already did. It's a question from Grace about for those with neurodivergent or mental health issues or events or groups in the work.
Yeah, that's any group is really able to kind of create a group with as long as you have a number of people interests and a faculty advisor. For example, we have a group of students who want to start a parent group. And so within journalism school, we don't have any kind of specific formality except for the faculty advisor. If you want to become a registered student organization at the university level to get additional support and funding, that's a different process. So NABJ and, as Ari said, EJA both are registered student organizations with the university. It's just up to the student interest.
I will say we do talk a lot about mental health, outside in the whole school format, particularly with the pandemic. Everyone's really been struggling, in this virtual format. So there's been a heavy push to discuss mental health issues among the students.
And aside from that, we also, oh no, go.
Sorry. I was just gonna say that there's also a center on campus for called the Disabled Students Program that any student on campus can register with, and then you can receive like accommodations and any resources that might be helpful. Yeah.
I believe if you, whether you're on university health insurance or not, you also have access to like counseling services through the university. And they're actually, I mean, it sucks because the way they're doing it currently is that you have to like reschedule your, like you can't just have like a standing appointment for like every week. You have to basically just reach out to them whenever you want an appointment each time. But they are pretty good at trying to get you in pretty quickly. And I would highly recommend like looking at that if that's something, even before coming in, if it's something that you know you might need.
And then we do have a health and wellness kind of group or Slack channel. It's not an official thing too, but like this is like something that's encouraged. I think it's started by like, you know, members of the J School as well. So basically like you post healthy selfies or something that you've done to like for self-care to be nice to yourself. And then usually there will be raffles held for those who I guess post the most, but yeah. So I think that's just one way to like build community, and just so you that way, like, you know, you're not alone in terms of what you're dealing with. All right. Any other questions too for those interested in coming? No. Okay. Well, and also feel free if it's not something like related to one of the affinity groups, or if you just want to talk about J School life in general, definitely feel free to drop that in the chat too. And then also I see where any of our members or any of our panelists, feel free to drop your email in the chat as well. So that way like you can reach out to them after this too.
Hey, I have a quick question. Is the NAHJ chapter active? The Hispanic journalists active this year? Still going? Okay.
It is Yuri. I think you might have missed it earlier too, but oh, did Yuri hop off? Oh, she was having internet connections too. But yeah, it is active. They are transitioning into like new leadership too, since our current co-chair is graduating, or the current co-chair for that is graduating too. But yes, for more students to join. All right, any other questions?
Really feel free to just ask us super honest questions about student life here too, if you want. Like, I think all of us are very happy to answer that. We're all pretty candid and honest and open about stuff, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially for those of you who haven't made, I guess, a decision yet, if you want to enroll or not. Their deadline is what, May 1st, correct? To decide.
I can tell you all about my decision to come to Berkeley because I was choosing between free schools, guys, so.
Yeah, I also just wanted to quickly say, talk about my experience as well. I think a lot of times when people think about graduate school for journalism, it's for people who don't know anything about journalism or are like very new to the industry. And that was not at all my experience. I went to undergrad for journalism. I had a pretty good internship before I came here. And so my purpose was I had a story that I was really interested in doing. And I wanted 2 years of editing experience on that story to make it really good and to get it somewhere published. And then also, like I was talking about with the collaboration, right? Like Berkeley doesn't have technically have a data journalism program, but you have access to EECS and the School of Information. So you literally have the best computer science people in the world here at Berkeley. And so that was one of my goals, is to learn a lot more advanced data journalism stuff. So if you have a lot of experience in journalism, or you're really attached to doing one story and you want editing help, or if any of that sounds like you, we want you here as well.
If I can add on to that, I came into the program, I feel like somewhere between almost mid-career, I guess. I've worked in the industry for a couple of years before I went to grad school, but I've just been really stunned at like the sheer number of opportunities to collaborate with other like I work with the Human Rights Center, and it's been bringing like a ton of opportunities my way. And so, I think, no matter where you are in your career, within the J School and within Berkeley as a whole, there's a lot of people to collaborate with, a lot of people to learn from, and it's been a very good environment, I think, for me, just kind of grow my skills as a journalist. And to touch on some of the questions in the chat about advice for, or things that I wish I did in April to come in, or advice for incoming students, I think I didn't really get a sense of what Berkeley as a whole could offer until I was a couple months in. And by then, in terms of like money, resources, classes, extracurriculars, there's a whole universe of stuff out there. And I really wish I dug into that and really, saw all these places I could tap into, like the D School, and, like there's like, I wish I did stuff like Ari did with iSchool and taking classes there. There's just so many things that you can do outside of your J School education. So that I think that'd be a good thing to look into.
Especially you do have one more year, so that is a lot to explore too. So yeah, and just to be clear with you all, like even though you're mostly going to be at the J School, like it is part of the larger university too. So definitely, like, feel free to venture out and like connect with other schools too. I'm pretty sure a few of you already here have done so. A lot of students, some students go to the School of Human, not the School of Human Resources, but the Human Rights Center. There's partnerships, of course, with like the School of Information. Some students are in the School of Public Health too, and it really helps with their reporting, or if you just want to be in a different space.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ari.
Yeah, I was just to touch on Pablo's question about balancing affinity groups. Obviously, things are different now during the pandemic, but I will say Brett runs both. I don't know, Sasha, are you the new co-chair for WIM, or is Brett still the co-chair?
That's a really good question.
But basically, Brett ran Women in Media and EJA before Sasha and I assumed roles in both of those places. She's in 19 units. She's doing basically 2 theses. She has 4 jobs. Like she's able to make all of that work. She's like a superwoman. So it's definitely possible. I'm doing a lot less than that. I'm in like 12 units, and yeah, it's totally doable to balance all of these things.
Dallin, I believe you wanted to say something too.
Yeah, thanks, Chance. I really like this question about what advice you'd give to incoming students. And one thing I've been really learning is just being really intentional with the stories you want to tell. And it's like, I know all of y'all applied to this program, and I'm sure really amazing at what you do. And when I came to the J School, I feel like it's so easy to get caught up in a lot of different things. Like maybe you want to do video and photo, and like you get so distracted. But after a while, it's just really nice to figure and sit with yourself and be like, what did I come here to do? And what do I really want to do with my time here? And I think that's been really helpful for me. And it's allowed me to really focus on, for me, it's video making. For other people, it's anything else they want. But just being really intentional with the stories you want to tell, the communities you want to represent, and really listening to yourself and advocating for yourself in that, I think it's been really nice. Yeah, that's the advice I would have given myself.
I just wanted to say as well, at least to have it on the record in comparison to what Ari was saying, I'm someone that came into the J School with literally no journalism experience, like someone I saw in the chat. And it's obviously a bit of a different experience, but it's definitely doable as well. So you shouldn't feel too overwhelmed. And there's definitely a really steep learning curve in the first semester. So in terms of preparing, if you're not someone that like reads the news like daily and regularly, I would become like familiar with that, and maybe like make yourself a journalism Twitter and start following journalist Twitter people, because apparently that's a really big deal to the like little group of journalists that exists in the world. So yeah, don't feel too intimidated by people like Ari was mentioning, like Brett, who can do all of that. She's definitely very tired. I've spoken with her. So, just also remember to prioritize your own well-being and like the fact that you're here to learn. So yeah, I would say like kind of what Dallin was saying, like don't get too caught up in all of the antics of it all, and like just remember that you're here to you're coming here to learn, and and tell the stories you want to tell. And you can do that at your own pace.
Going off of what Dallin and Sabrina are saying, I do think like advocating for yourself and being prepared to advocate for yourself is really important. And, you know, like what advocating for yourself might look like varies from person to person. I am, as everyone here who like knows me knows, I'm very loud. I am not scared to like get up in front of the entire Zoom call and be like, you know what, actually, I think that this is not right because X, Y, and Z. But, you know, for some people, advocating for themselves might look like, you know, going kind of privately to some folks at the school and letting them know their thoughts or letting them know if they're having trouble with something. It might look like talking to a professor and telling them, hey, I've had a really shitty mental health week this week, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this assignment in on time. And those are all things that I've had to do as well. So I think being prepared to advocate for yourself is a big one. I also think the big piece of advice I would give myself is to kind of like be ready for the fact that you're going to have to sometimes fight for things that you want. I came into Berkeley from an undergraduate school where we didn't have a journalism program, like at all. And so my experience was really limited to like fighting tooth and nail for like student paper opportunities and internships. And I kind of had this assumption then when I got to Berkeley, like, oh, like there's gonna be like a million different opportunities and I'm gonna be able to take advantage of all of them. And the reality is that there's lots of opportunities, but you know, each opportunity, there's only so much funding to go around for it. So, you know, there is a limit to how many people will be able to get into the IRP. There's a limit to how many people will be able to do X, Y, and Z. And there's also a limit to what you can do in terms of your own mental well-being. And I think that it's just important to like remember, like it's just as important to build connections outside the school as it is to build them within the school, and kind of just being ready to like jump into that like internship search in the fall and jump into like making connections and jump into kind of figuring out who at the school are people who kind of are going to be in your corner, and who you can rely on to go to when you need help are all really important things.
I have a question. I'm curious for y'all, like, so last year there was a lot of talk about first semester and the workloads and expectations. I'm wondering now in your second semester if you can reflect on kind of what that was actually really like. I'm coming to J school with a little bit more experience and sort of knowledge of journalism behind me. But I'm really excited to hear everyone of every level's experience of like what that actually looked like.
Yeah, for me, you know, the first semester was really tough because, like I said, I just came out of undergrad journalism, so it was a lot of the same material, and that combined with the Zoom. Like, I'm a person who doesn't like to be bored. Like, I will actually do worse in classes if I know the material because I won't like focus. But that's just a personal thing. But I did actually learn a lot. It wasn't necessarily the material that like the class was supposed to be teaching. So everyone takes this J200 class, there's an intro reporting class. And so I didn't need to know how to write a news story, but I did learn, you know, interpersonal things. I learned, I was put in charge of our election coverage. So there was sort of that leadership aspect there. And I think just that's kind of the bad news. The good news is everything, I really think that like everything is going to be 10 times better for you guys because just having to deal with Zoom and all that, you know, nonsense that, you know, that we had to deal with, you guys won't have to deal with, you'll be in person. So I really do think it'll be a lot better. Brian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just I agree with Ari for a lot of that. I'd say that I worked in my first semester too. So it kind of I came into the school having worked in newspapers and other places. And so I was comfortable with reporting, and I also was in the video class. But, you know, sometimes like the assignments would stack up and then work would stack up. And so it would get stressful at times there, kind of managing the time, because these are really full on production classes. Like since it was a pandemic, we were only expected to write every other week. But normal years, you'd be writing every single week and pitching. So the frequency is kind of not super intense, but if you trip up, right, or get behind, it's very easy to find yourself very behind, which is where I found myself a few times first semester. but I survived it. You know, I got through, passed my classes, and did pretty well in my work. So it's doable. It's just kind of depends on how you manage your time. I probably would have been less stressed if I wasn't working. But
Yeah, I
Yes.
think if I wasn't working things, I probably would have been a little bit less stressed. The crappy part about the first semester is that you really have very little control over like what classes you're able to take. So you get one elective and you get to select that, but you have to take J200, right? And so J200, I mean, Ari said he was, you know, kind of bored with it. There are times when I was a little bored with it, but to be honest, like I came in with like with student newspaper experience. So I was used to working on daily stuff. And I found that I actually wasn't very bored with it because of the way that my professor structured the class kind of forced us to like experiment with a bunch of different writing forms, which was cool. And I was reporting on Richmond, which was a city I knew almost nothing about. So a lot of my semester was kind of spent like getting to know Richmond and getting to understand like what are the issues there. I spent a lot of time reporting on the unhoused community there, which was really interesting. And my professor definitely, I mean, it wasn't required for the purposes of the class because COVID, but we definitely were encouraged, you know, if we were comfortable to go out and report in the field, provided we have like proper permissions from the school. So, so that like the good part is that it's going to get everybody kind of on the same level and you're going to get to know your classmates, which is awesome because I've just spent so much time at the J School, like in awe of the people I go to school with. Not even necessarily always for like their journalistic accomplishments, but just people have really cool, unique like life experiences here. Like I was in class with like somebody who like served in like the Department of State. Like I have a friend who worked in like campaign finance research and like campaign ops before she came to the J School. And so people just have like really interesting backstories that you'll kind of come to be like just really interested by. And so the good part is you'll be bonding with the class. And when you have spare time, because you will have some spare time your first semester that you just won't have in subsequent semesters, you can kind of go through that process of like applying for lots of internships, applying for lots of opportunities. I did like freelance research assistance throughout my first semester here to bring in extra money. So that's what I was doing. I was working on a book about Kamala Harris. So it kind of just like lets you explore really cool avenues that you might not be able to. But the downside is, yeah, J200, like, I don't think it's anybody's like favorite class to take at the J School. Like it just isn't, but it'll get you all the foundation, so.
And I will say this semester is just a million times better for me. I think part of that was me adjusting. I moved cross country. I moved from North Carolina. So that was a tough adjustment for me. You know, beginning of the pandemic, I wasn't able to meet people, you know, trying to time manage over Zoom classes. And, but yeah, this semester has just been miles and miles better. I'm working, I'm in, you know, a full load of classes, 14 units of classes. So yeah, I mean, it might be tough for a bit, but yeah, it gets much better. And like I said, I think it's going to be a lot better for you guys being in person.
I did want to answer one question. I don't know if we addressed it. Somebody said, do you find it difficult to balance membership with affinity groups with the rest of your school work life too? If you're in a position of leadership and you have like, you want to be like very actively involved in your hosting events or like arranging different things, then yeah, it might. I found that too, I guess, as like a co-chair, because we definitely wanted to have like a presence within the J School as well. But yeah, it's just going to depend on like the level of time that you want to commit to it too. So certain semesters, like some groups might be a little more quiet if they don't have like enough members or they have other things going on, or other semesters, you know, you'll see like there's active involvement if people like hosting panel discussions and all of that too. And if you always need a helping hand and you want to like collaborate with another group, then that can also lessen the stress at times too. But yeah, it is manageable. It just depends on how much you want to give to it too. Because again, these are like not extracurriculars. It's not your main work, but it is definitely like a big part of it too, just to show others that you were helping kind of like build the diversity, or at least within the school.
I think that's the big thing with the J School. It's like there's a lot of opportunities, and it kind of depends on how much you want to put yourself into it and how much effort you want to put into it, right? And so you can pull back if you need to, or you can really kind of like dive in and do really big and cool things. So it's there's a lot of flexibility there in terms of, it's not like a full on commit or like not at all, right? You can kind of adjust your participation as what works for you.
Yeah. And now that we have 5 minutes there is one more point that I want to bring up, especially for like students of color or like those who are coming from like marginalized communities too. Like you might hear conversations around imposter syndrome, or the feeling that you might feel like you don't belong here, or that somebody else has more experience than you do, or more knowledge than something. Like, you guys got in for a reason. And like, whether or not you choose to enroll or not, just know that like that is a big accomplishment in and of itself, that you all come from unique backgrounds, or that of course like the J School saw something in you that felt could add to like the community vibe as well. So just always remember that when you're in your classes, when you're reporting, especially for those who are like kind of like looking for a career change, or like trying to brush up on their journalism skills, or have no background experience in journalism at all. Like ultimately you're there to learn. So the goal is who you came in, like the person who came in like at the start of your J School journey will be definitely much more stronger, more well-rounded as a journalist once you leave in whatever field too. So yeah, you belong. All righty. So again, I believe that wraps up our presentation. I want to thank all our panelists that came. Thank you so much for sharing about your groups. They did leave their emails in the chat too, so feel free to reach out to them as well if you have any questions before you make your decisions, or if you just have any general questions about like J School life. So if that's okay with you all too, as panelists, if they're free to reach out to you too.
Honestly, I'm honored whenever somebody emails me and asks me for my opinion on something. So really nothing could make me happier. Please email me.
Yes, we'll be getting more. And Blaine or Tracy, if there's anything you have to add before we close out.
I was going to see if Tracy didn't want to say anything, but yeah.
Oh.
No, all right. Well, I just appreciate everyone, all the panelists and everyone who did come today, especially Chancellor who put this together.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's really, really super informative. And I think we lost a lot of our attendees. We had a lot of people register, but they lost out to the open house. So currently, simultaneous to this, folks are visiting the classes. So I think Queen is doing one of her audio classes or editing classes right now. So students are probably, or the perspectives are probably there. But yeah, I appreciate everyone taking their time to participate in the presentation. And again, this is being recorded, so it'll be up on the website for folks, and so they'll be able to hear it at some point. And also the slides. So, and then what's going to be really, really important is to see the diversity resources slide. I'll probably post that in the Slack channel so everyone can see it. All right, again, we're going to go ahead and close, and everyone enjoy the rest of the day.
All right, thank you all so much.
All right, take care. I'm going to go ahead.